What is the meaning of life? Is it even possible to truly find it? And above all, does the question itself make sense? Since the beginning of time, humanity has been asking these questions, searching for answers that could bring light to our choices, our suffering, and our joy. Few writers have gone as deep into these mysteries as Fyodor Dostoevsky. His entire life and work were dedicated to exploring the essence of existence, going beyond appearances and easy certainties. In this video, we'll look at three of his greatest masterpieces and uncover the lessons they offer us about freedom, guilt, redemption, and the complexity of being human. Early life and turning point. Dostoevsky was born in Moscow in 1821. From a young age, he was drawn to philosophy and literature, but his path was anything but simple. After first studying military engineering, he turned to writing. His debut novel, Poor Folk, gained critical acclaim in 1846. But in 1849, his life changed forever. He was arrested for joining a revolutionary group that opposed the Tsar's regime. Sentenced to death, Dostoevsky stood before a firing squad, awaiting the end, when, at the very last moment, a pardon arrived. Instead of execution, he was condemned to years of hard labor in Siberia, followed by military service. Those years in suffering and despair transformed him completely. In the harshest conditions, he came to face with the rawest truths of human existence, pain, survival, and the fragile hope for redemption. These experiences would later give birth to his most powerful works. Notes from Underground, 1864. One of his first masterpieces after exile was Notes from Underground. The book presents an anonymous narrator who calls himself sick and unpleasant. Through him, Dostoevsky explores the limits of rationality and the paradox of free will. The key lesson: human beings are not machines of logic. Sometimes we act against our own best interests, not out of madness, but to prove that we are free. For Dostoevsky, the meaning of life lies not in perfection, but in authenticity, in the freedom to embrace contradictions, even when they cause pain. Life's meaning, then, is not a final answer, but the endless search itself. Crime and Punishment, 1866. 2 years later came Crime and Punishment, the story of Raskolnikov, a young student who murders 2 women in the belief that extraordinary people have the right to rise above morality. But guilt eats away at him. What begins as an intellectual experiment becomes a tormenting journey toward redemption. Here, Dostoevsky teaches us something profound. True greatness is not found in power or ambition, but in the courage to face our sins, accept suffering, and seek forgiveness. Even the gravest mistake can be the beginning of transformation. Life's meaning is discovered in reconciliation, with ourselves and with others. The Brothers Karamazov, 1880. Among his final works, The Brothers Karamazov is a monumental novel about faith, doubt, passion, and morality. The 3 brothers, Dmitri, Ivan, and Alyosha, each represent a different vision of life: passion, reason, and faith. Dostoevsky shows us that existence is full of contradictions. Reason and belief, love and hate, freedom and duty all clash within us. Yet it is through these struggles that we grow. The meaning of life, then, is not in choosing a single path, but in balancing the many forces inside us and finding harmony in the chaos. Dostoevsky's legacy. Despite poverty, illness, and loss, Dostoevsky maintained a vision of humanity that was deep, compassionate, and honest. He influenced generations of thinkers, from Nietzsche to Sartre. For him, man was always a mystery to be solved. And even if it takes an entire lifetime, the search itself is never wasted. Perhaps this is his greatest lesson for us today, that the true meaning of life lies not in final answers, but in the continuous search for truth, for freedom, for redemption, and for connection. Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky was born in Moscow in 1821. His father was a doctor, his mother a woman of deep faith. From a young age, Fyodor was fascinated by literature and philosophy. He read Shakespeare, Pushkin, and the Bible. But his path was not straightforward. His family was middle class, and so he was sent to study military engineering, a respectable, stable career. Yet the young Dostoevsky's heart was not in it. He felt trapped, torn between duty and the burning desire to understand the human soul. At the age of 25, he published his first novel, Poor Folk. It was an instant success. Critics saw him as the new voice of Russian literature. For a moment, it seemed that Dostoevsky had found his place in the world. But destiny had other plans. The arrest and the near execution. In 1849, Dostoevsky joined a small intellectual circle, a group of young thinkers who dared to criticize the Tsar's autocratic rule. They discussed politics, philosophy, and the need for reform. For this, Dostoevsky was arrested. He spent months in prison, awaiting trial. Then came the verdict: death by firing squad. On the morning of his scheduled execution, Dostoevsky and other prisoners were led to the square. They were blindfolded. The soldiers raised their rifles. Dostoevsky waited for the final moment. And then, a miracle. At the very last second, a messenger announced a pardon from the Tsar. The death sentence was commuted to 4 years of hard labor in Siberia, followed by military service. Imagine the impact of that moment. 1 second you are about to die, the next second you are given life again. For Dostoevsky, this was not only a turning point in his biography, it was a rebirth of the soul. Siberia, the crucible of suffering. The years in Siberia were brutal. Harsh winters, hunger, chains, disease. Dostoevsky lived among criminals and murderers. He experienced humiliation, despair, and the raw struggle for survival. But he also discovered something profound. In the darkest conditions, he saw sparks of humanity, kindness between prisoners, hope that refused to die. Siberia broke him and remade him. It stripped away illusions, forcing him to confront life at its most basic. From this crucible of suffering, his deepest themes were born: guilt, redemption, freedom, and the mystery of existence. Notes from Underground, 1864. When Dostoevsky returned to writing, he was no longer the same man. His 1864 work, Notes from Underground, is often called the first great psychological novel in world literature. The narrator is anonymous, bitter, self-destructive. He calls himself sick, unpleasant, irrational. Through this character, Dostoevsky explores a terrifying truth. Humans are not guided by reason alone. Sometimes we act against our own best interests, not out of madness, but out of freedom. to prove that we are not machines, that we are not bound only by logic or social rules. We may choose pain, contradiction, even destruction. The lesson is clear. The meaning of life is not in perfection, but in authenticity. To be alive is to embrace the contradictions inside us. Even when freedom hurts us, it makes us human. Crime and Punishment, 1866. 2 years later came Dostoevsky's most famous novel, Crime and Punishment. It tells the story of Raskolnikov, a poor student in St. Petersburg. He believes that some people, extraordinary people, have the right to rise above morality. He tests this theory by murdering a pawnbroker and her sister. But instead of liberation, he finds torment. Guilt eats at him, paranoia follows him, and every step brings him closer to collapse. Through Raskolnikov's agony, Dostoevsky shows us a universal truth. Greatness is not found in power or in the ability to bend morality. True greatness lies in facing our sins, accepting suffering, and seeking forgiveness. In Raskolnikov's eventual confession and punishment, we see redemption. Even the gravest mistakes can become the starting point of transformation. Life's meaning, then, is not found in domination, but in reconciliation with ourselves and with others. The Brothers Karamazov, 1880. Dostoevsky's final masterpiece, The Brothers Karamazov, expands his vision even further. It is the story of 3 brothers, Dmitri, full of passion, Ivan, guided by reason, and Alyosha, inspired by faith. Their father is murdered, and each brother becomes entangled in the tragedy. But the novel is much more than a family drama. It is a philosophical epic about free will, morality, and the struggle between faith and doubt. Each brother represents a part of the human condition. Dmitri is the fire of desire, Ivan the coldness of reason, Alyosha the warmth of belief. None of them alone can embody truth. Only together, in their conflict, their contradictions, their attempts to love and forgive, do we see the complexity of humanity. The meaning of life, Dostoevsky suggests, is not found in one single perspective. It is found in the balance we seek between passion and reason, faith and doubt. Life is never linear. It is in the tension of opposites that we grow. Themes that echo today. Throughout his works, Dostoevsky returned again and again to the same questions. What does it mean to be free? Can suffering lead to redemption? Are we defined by reason or by irrational choices? Can guilt become the doorway to forgiveness? His answer was never simple, but perhaps that is the point. Dostoevsky's vision is that the meaning of life is not in a final destination, but in the journey, in the constant struggle, the constant search, the constant confrontation with our contradictions. Dostoevsky's legacy. Dostoevsky died in 1881. He left behind novels that continued to inspire readers, philosophers, and thinkers across the world. Nietzsche admired him. Sartre was influenced by him. Freud studied him. But more than academic influence, Dostoevsky left us a spiritual inheritance. He taught us that being human is being complex, that man is a mystery, and to spend a lifetime trying to understand that mystery is not a waste of time, but the very essence of living. Conclusion: the continuous search. So, what is the meaning of life? For Dostoevsky, it was not about reaching perfection. It was not about eliminating pain. It was not about finding a single answer.
The meaning of life lies in the search itself, in the courage to face suffering, in the freedom to choose even when it makes no sense, in the possibility of redemption even after our worst mistakes, in the balance between passion and reason, faith and doubt. Life's meaning is not given to us, it is created day by day through our choices, our struggles, our love, and our hope. Perhaps Dostoevsky's words sum it up best. Man is a mystery. It must be unraveled. And if you spend your whole life unraveling it, don't say you've wasted your time. I study this mystery because I want to be a man. And maybe that is all we need, to keep searching, to keep questioning, to keep living authentically, freely, humanly.
Those in power need people to remain afflicted with sadness. This idea perfectly reflects the thinking of Baruch Spinoza, one of the great minds of 17th-century rationalism. Spinoza dismantled reality piece by piece, showing that fear, anxiety, and pain are not only personal experiences, but also tools of control. Fear makes people submissive. Suffering blinds them to alternatives. If power thrives on sadness, then breaking free from it becomes the most revolutionary act of all. Yet most people live under the illusion that fear is inevitable and suffering unavoidable. Spinoza challenged this belief centuries ago, arguing that fear is not a natural truth, but a distortion of thought. By exposing this, he offered a way to ease anxiety and transform how we live. Amsterdam in the 17th century was a crossroads of trade and ideas, but also hostile to those who questioned authority. Born in 1632 into Amsterdam's Sephardic Jewish community, Spinoza showed early brilliance and curiosity. For him, God was not a punishing being outside the world, but the very fabric of nature, its laws, its order, its necessity. These ideas clashed with orthodoxy. At just 23, Spinoza was excommunicated. The curse was total. No one could speak to him, help him, or even mention his name. His family renounced him. His community erased him. Instead of despair, Spinoza embraced solitude. Supporting himself as a lens grinder, he quietly built a philosophy destined to reshape humanity's view of freedom and reality. He rejected the notion of free will. Every thought, desire, or decision, he argued, is part of an unbroken chain of causes. Nothing is random, and because nothing could be otherwise, it is futile to suffer over what we cannot change. By accepting the necessity of events, we loosen fear's grip. Spinoza's insight is that people suffer less from the events themselves than from the expectations they attach to them. Life feels painful not because of what is, but because of what we wish it to be. Happiness, then, is not about controlling the universe, but aligning ourselves with its order. Events are neither punishments nor injustices. They are simply the unfolding of natural laws. From this vision, we can draw 3 steps toward freedom from fear and suffering. Observe emotions without being consumed. Fear, anger, and sadness are not enemies, but signals. Instead of reacting impulsively, pause and ask, is this fear real or just a projection of the mind? Most fears are exaggerated stories that never materialize. Use reason to clarify reality. Emotions can distort perception. Through reason, a criticism can become an opportunity, and failure a new beginning. Suffering comes not from events, but from the meaning we assign to them. Accept what cannot be changed. Much suffering arises from resisting reality. A missed opportunity, a canceled plan, a relationship's end, all are part of life's order. Acceptance is not surrender, but liberation from wasted struggle.
By ceasing to fight the inevitable, we discover new possibilities in the present. Through this practice, fear loses its hold, not because the world changes, but because our relationship to it changes. Spinoza died in 1777 at just 44, weakened by the fine glass dust of his work. He left no riches, no power, no fame, but he discovered something far greater: inner freedom. Freedom from fear, from the tyranny of emotions, from illusions of control. Centuries later, his philosophy still speaks with radical clarity. Reality cannot be altered, but our understanding of it can, and in that understanding lies the end of suffering.